Hi, this is Cyrus Fernando alongside Kova International. Today we'll be speaking with Luke Smallbone, one half of the Grammy Award-winning duo for King and Country, a band that has captured hearts across the world with 13 #1 singles, over 3 billion streams, and a message of faith, hope and courage. After taking a year away from touring, Luke and his brother Joel returned refreshed and re-energized, stepping into what they call a new season of passion and purpose. Their brand new single, World of Fire, is more than just a song. It's a rallying cry to live boldly and on fire for God. From humble beginnings in Australia to sold-out arenas across the United States and Europe, For King and Country have become one of the most inspiring voices in modern Christian music, blending cinematic sound with stories that touch the soul. Beyond the stage, Luke is a husband, father and actor, most recently appearing in the feature film Unsung Hero, remarkable story of faith, perseverance and new beginnings. I previously had the privilege of speaking with both Luke and Joel on my real life series about this truly inspiring film. So today, to give us an insight into his real life and his new single, World on Fire, we're delighted to be joined by Luke Smallbone, singer, actor and half of For King and Country. Luke, welcome to the program. How are you doing?
Hey man, thanks for taking the time to chat with me. What a intro monologue. Makes me feel like I've done something with my life. I appreciate it.
You're just inspiring so many people, bro, so keep going. Luke, once again, I want to congratulate you for this really inspiring film, Unsung Hero, which I really encourage anyone to go out and watch if they haven't seen it. To any of our viewers who hasn't seen it, can you just give us a small little summary into what is it about?
Yeah, so Unsung Hero. So I'm originally from Australia. Hopefully you can still tell the Americans have compromised my accent, so I blame them. But originally from Australia, and our dad was a concert promoter in Australia, and on one particular tour that he brought back to Australia, the tour didn't go very well, and we actually lost everything that we had as a family. And so dad was looking for a fresh start for his career, for the family, and he got a job offer in Nashville, Tennessee, in the States. And so he took the job, but soon after we arrived in America, dad lost that job. And so we were kind of stranded on the other side of the world. Food was difficult, so we didn't have much money, not many friends. It was a very, very difficult time. And so the story of Unsung Hero is just kind of about how we got out of this struggle, kind of how we got out of this hole, some of the stories and the adventures that we went on. And so yes, if you haven't seen it, check it out. The movie's called Unsung Hero.
Can you give our viewers an insight into the sacrifices your parents made when you were children and how important that was in order for you to be the person that you are today?
Yeah, look. But first of all, I'm not nothing. I am a fellow sojourner. I am nothing extraordinary. I am just a person that is trying to do the things that God's called me in my life. And I think when it comes to my parents, I think that mom and dad, they weren't perfect parents by any means, but they taught us the most important things, which is if you start to really think about what a parent is required or should be required to teach their children, they should teach them right from wrong. And they should have a place, a loving home for the mistakes that are inherently going to take place in a child's life, that they can fall back and rest on the grace and the love of parents who are guiding them through those early periods of life. And I think if I was to look at what mom and dad did extraordinarily well, is they did those things. They taught us the most important things. And when those mistakes and some of the things that are inevitable as you grow, they were there to help pick us up. They were there to help redirect us. And I think the other thing is they did not hide some of the struggles that were going on in and around them and in their life. When we came with nothing, and you're struggling to pay rent, and you go into like the local food bank to pick up food, they didn't hide those things from us. And I think that helped build some sort of resiliency in who we were as kids. And I think their faithfulness and sacrifice is something that still to this day we give thanks to them for and give thanks to God for.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Luke. Now, looking back, how did growing up in Australia, moving to the US, shape your faith and your music, more importantly?
Yeah, look, it's interesting because obviously Australia speaks English, and it's in a Western world, and so a lot of people there couldn't really be much cultural shock, right? It's very similar. And it's funny. Sometimes the similarities create even greater culture shock because it's like almost, but not quite. And so I think that, one of the things that is adverse has impacted me a lot of late is a struggle produces something in people. Struggle produces character, character perseverance, perseverance hope. And I think one of the things that we were afforded as children is the privilege of being able to struggle, being able to struggle and still be well loved. Those things don't usually go hand in hand. But when you are going to take a family to 7 kids, 9 people total, obviously because of the parents, from one culture to another, restarting life in my dad's 40s, that's a unique story that not many people have. And I think that the fact that they were open about those things, I think that they are the very things that inform our music and inform who we are as people today.
Within today's society, children may be being brought up in a lot different times than maybe we were when we were growing up, and there's a lot more privileges and things are more easily available, and they don't know the sacrifice or the hard that goes through certain things. So how do we make that balance? How do we teach our children about hardship, so to speak, or at least value and appreciate what they have today?
Yeah, I mean, look, sometimes the greatest way to love our children is to take away some levels of privilege. And when I talk about privilege, I am talking about like we need to teach our kids hard work. We need to teach our kids what it means to be disciplined, what it means. And once again, going even back, you got to teach your kids right and wrong. And so, obviously, the number one probably issue that all parents are facing today is screens. Yeah. Screens are tripping up our kids because they want to be constantly entertained. And here's what I would say to parents is, look, our kids watch some things, right? Because I'm a big believer in some cases, not exclusively taking it away, because we also have to teach our kids to manage it, right? And this is something that's only going to get more and more as we go. But what I will say is boredom is the chief ingredient of creativity. And so if our kids go from school to home, to watching something, to going to the event that they're doing, to watching something, to having dinner, to watching something, you actually remove one of the greatest gifts that you could give your children, which is boredom. And what I mean by boredom is boredom does not take place for a child for longer than about 30 seconds. They'll say, "I'm bored," and then what happens? They almost immediately, if you say, "Cool, go find something," they almost immediately go and find something. And that something usually has a part of creativity that I often think that God wants to grow in our children. And so those are some of the things that I would say that the challenges and hopefully some of the ways that we can overcome some of the things that we're dealing with today.
The music that you've produced has had over 3 billion streams worldwide as well. So why is it important for you to continue producing material, especially that's inspiring so many people?
Look, I think that, I don't know what art is in heaven. Right? I don't know if there's movies. I don't know if there's painting. I'm guessing there is. But, I don't know what type of art there is. One thing I do know is music is in heaven. Yeah. That's why when we listen to a great song, we listen to something and it inherently feels like there's something spiritual taking place. I do not know how long we will do this for. That's really, God's decision, not ours. But what I do know is God has given me stories. He's given me thoughts, he's given me melodies, he's given me songs. And as of right now, I just think that is my obligation and that is what God has given me. And if I don't do those things, then I think that I'm actually falling out of the will of what God wants for me in my life. And so we write these songs. I write about these stories. God has given them to me. And my hope is that someone along the way says, "Man, I don't know this individual who wrote this song, but somehow I'm going through some of the exact same things in my life. And this gives me a little bit of a framework, a little bit of encouragement, or maybe it identifies or articulates what I could not do myself. And it gives me a little bit of hope." That's the reason why we do what we do.
Wow, beautiful. You and your brother have described this moment as a new season of passion and purpose. What does God teaching you during this particular year when you've been away from touring?
I think C.S. Lewis writes this about this. But some of when you become a Christian, a lot of people, obviously there's this sense like you've crossed the threshold, you're good, and that is true. But you can become ineffective with busyness. And I think sometimes the enemy's greatest weapon against who we are as people is you become busy. You're just always doing something. There's always something going on. And so I think for us to take some time, I do think it allowed our soul to kind of catch up with some of the things that we were doing. But also, I'm not a good enough songwriter to write songs about things that I don't care about. I have to live a little bit of life. I have to actually pour myself into these songs. And so to take a little bit of time, it's allowed, my wife and I, Courtney, to go on some adventures together with the kids and go and live, because most of songwriting takes place of observing people, observing moments, observing yourself. But if you're chronically busy, it's difficult to observe when you're busy, And so I think some of those things, this time off has allowed us to restore ourselves. I think it's allowed us to restore our families and our marriages and all these, but it's also allowed us to restore the creativity of what we're doing. So hopefully, this year will be the year of, when we look back on and then we say, look at all the creativity that came from it because we just allowed ourselves to slow down a little bit.
For anyone who's watching us today, and obviously you've just taken a year out, but for anyone who's watching who is living a very busy life, they're non-stop, they're go, 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 working 24/7, so to speak, why is it important for them to take some time out? And what practical advice can we give to our viewers today?
Oh, man, look, I am not a pastor and nor am I a psychologist or a master of all these things, right? But I will just give you my perspective. I got really, really sick a lot of years ago. When I got really, really sick, I probably prayed my first angry prayer. And I went to God and I was like, God, why am I so sick? I feel like I'm out there doing your work, serving you, trying to do the things that you've called me to do. And yet now I've got a disease. And the doctors are saying, I've got this disease because I worked too much. I'm too stressed out. And look, you always got to be careful when, I felt God after that just say to me, Luke, it was never about what you could do for me. It was never about what you could achieve. I just wanted your heart. And I think for others, I would just say, sometimes we can get lost in the rat race of doing things for God, and we forget that actually all God really wants is our heart. And when he has your heart, he can inform all of the things that you're doing. But sometimes we get it in the wrong order. We're doing things for God versus all of the pleasures and the love that God has given us. We work from that place. And so what I would say is take the time and work from the place of knowing that you're loved, that you're cared for, that you don't have to accomplish anything for Jesus for him to love you. Because when you have that acceptance that God loves you and cares for you, it informs your work in a totally different way. There's a grace, there's a levity to it, there's a peace about it. But when we get on that hamster wheel, it's exhausting. And your body cannot withstand the amount of pressure that we give it at times. And so my hope is if anyone's listening, slow down a little bit, take those moments of those peace and accept that grace, accept that love, and may that grace and that love be the very foundation of then how we go out and how we do.
Fantastic words of inspiration. Thank you so much. Luke, for King and Country, has an amazing new single out now called World on Fire. It feels like a powerful anthem, but also musically and also spiritually as well. So tell us, what does this song particularly mean to you?
Yeah, well, a little bit of a story. We were actually in the UK about a year and a half ago or a year and a few months ago, and someone said to us, hey, do you want to go see Oxford University? And I was like, is the Pope Catholic? Of course I want to go see Oxford. And so we go there, we're looking at all these amazing buildings. They're all like 8 times older than anything that we have in Australia or in America, and it's just amazing. And then we come to this one little section in the road, and there's a little cobbled street for just like a 4x4 area, and there's a cross in the middle, an X. And I was kind of like, why do you have the cobbled stone and the X in the street? And they were like, oh, do you know about the Oxford martyrs? I'm like, no, do not know about the Oxford martyrs. And so I get on Wikipedia and this lady starts telling us about what's going on. And it's about, you probably know this story, but it's about Hugh Latimer and Nicholas Ridley and 2 people that were burnt at the stake. And right before they were burnt, Hugh Latimer turns over to Nicholas Ridley and he says, I pray by God's grace that we will light such a candle today that I pray shall never be put out. Wow. And I remember thinking, man, how bright is my light? How bright is my candle?
Yeah. And
so ironically enough, you guys didn't know this, but that story in the UK at Oxford is the very thing that helped inspire this song, World on Fire.
Absolutely amazing. What do you hope our viewers will take away when they hear this song, World on Fire, for the very first time?
Yeah, so we're taught this song, a beautiful, cute little song. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And when you're 4 years old and you sing it, it's like the most adorable thing in the world, you know.
Yeah.
But the question that I had is, well, is it getting brighter? You know, is it still a little light, or as we grow and as we mature, no, is it turning into like a bonfire? Is it turning into some like sort of explosive fire? I think my hope is that people, with the joy of the song, it's fun. Joy can be a very powerful weapon in life, and my hope is that fire, you put it on display, you put it on the mountaintop, and that it becomes extremely bright. And I hope that people ask themselves, "Am I still singing this little light of mine, or am I actually starting to sing, no, this massive light of mine, I've got to let it shine."
I love that, because your new song speaks about living on fire for God. How do you personally keep that fire alive in your daily life?
Man, it's funny growing up in the church. Come from a wonderful family. We're taught like, hey, man, you need to have your quiet time, and you need to have all these things. And when you're young, you're like, oh, wow, it's hard work. You need to be praying. You need to be, it's hard work. And the older I get, that's where the power is. You take set apart moments. One of the things I've realized, there's a lot of people, out there that feel like, well, when I read, I'm exhausted, and I don't understand it all purely when I'm reading the scriptures. And when I pray, my mind wanders, and I go all these different places, and it's like, God understands that.
Yeah.
God knows that. But just like any friendship, when you call someone up who's been a little lonely, right, and you haven't spoken to them in a while, they usually don't say, "How dare you not talk to me for the last 6 months, or the last 2 weeks, or the last whatever." They're usually like, "Oh, it's wonderful to hear from you."
Yeah.
That's who God is to us.
Wow.
You spend this time with him, and these words that sometimes you don't always fully understand. It's just scripturally true. When they go in, they do something to your heart. They do not return void. They shape you, they impact you, it gives you life. And so to me, it starts with those things. It starts with trying to make your marriages as healthy as possible, trying to have these kids that run around. We got 4 of them, like, to have these conversations, the conversations that I have with my friends, for them to be about life-giving things. The things, wrestling with the things of God. It's a joy to do that with people that you love. It's fun. You can be on differing sides of theology, and you can still end up like, oh, it's so fun to wrestle with these things together. And so I think it's those things. I think having those people, having community, people speak into your life. It's those things that restore or ignite the flame.
Can you give us a little insight into music, how music works? Because sometimes we can hear a song and it can inspire us, it can lift us up. Sometimes it can also take us into a dark place. So why is it important that you're producing these inspirational songs that can really help people and take them out of that darkness today?
Yeah, look, I mean, people write songs for all sorts of different purposes, right? I think that there's a lot of people out there that are trying to write songs just for them to be popular and hit songs. And that's not an accusation. I just think that's a motivation for a lot of people. They just want to write songs that make them money and, do all the different things. This is just my calling in life. Other people have all sorts of different callings in life, is to write songs, the soundtrack to their lives and the soundtracks to revival. And, one of the things I've realized about music is when you're on that run and you're exhausted, you can push play on a song, and all of a sudden you're jamming out as you're listening. That 3 minutes and 30 seconds got you another kind of half mile way down the track. Well, I think that music is a little bit like that in our lives. It has the gift of bypassing the head, going directly to the heart, directly to the soul. And depending on the music that you're listening to, I think music is so powerful. And you talked about dark music, is that dark music, once again, it can bypass your head and go directly to your soul, and it can darken your soul. And so you got to be very careful. And that's why I know that music is inherently spiritual, is because what we're listening to at some level shapes us. Now, I've written a fair share of sad songs, but my hope is to write sad songs that articulate some level of pain for another, that makes them feel not alone, that still in turn makes them feel uplifted, that makes them feel hopeful again. That's my hope for music.
For King and Country's music, it always feels cinematic and full of emotion. So can you give us a little insight into the writing process?
Yeah. Look, it's usually my brother and I, and at least one other person, just to have a tie and vote, against brothers. I'm kidding. But look, we like those songs. We like songs that move us. I've said for many years, I'm not a good enough songwriter to write songs that don't move me, that don't affect me. And this may sound selfish. I write songs actually to comfort my own soul. Because what I've realized about music, if it comforts my own soul, there's millions of other people out there who are going through very, very similar things as me. And so I want I love orchestras. My brother loves orchestras. So we have it feel, big. We want it to feel moving. We want the chords to give you chills. We want those things. So that's not very scientific of an answer, but that's kind of the thought process behind what we do is for it to move you. It's intentional. We want it to. Music is just that powerful. I've often said there's two genres of music. There's good music and there's bad music. Our hope is to write good music.
You've shared openly about your personal challenges, from your health struggles to seasons of uncertainty. How has God met you in these moments?
When I was first married, my wife, we would be praying together. We pray together every night. And she once said to me, she's like, Luke, you pray as if you're like the leader of a congregation. You pray as if like these prayers that are like, orchestrated, like you don't expose anything about who you are. You just pray these prayers that just have no teeth. It makes my wife sound like she's like really tough on me, but it was just like we were laughing as she was talking about this. But it was true. I prayed like pre-thought out prayers. And I think in those struggles, God can handle your pain. He went through a lot of pain for you, so he can handle your pain. He went through his fair share of all sorts of experience in his life, so he can handle your doubt. He can handle your uncertainty. There's nothing better. There's nothing actually more intimate than when a child comes to you and says, Dad, I don't feel close to you right now, and I don't know why. You feel so actually honored that your child would come to you with these very vulnerable requests. Yeah. And yet I was praying from this, like, I'm going to offend God with my prayers, And so I would say, man, if you've got all sorts of different struggles and all sorts of different things going on in your life, pray reckless, angry prayers. Pray disappointed prayers. Look at the way that David prayed. David prays things that I would just don't. My reverence of God feels too strong to pray some of the things that David prays. But he prays these things. And you know what it says? David was a man after God's own heart.
Wow.
So when we're engaging in this dialogue back and forth, he can handle all of the disappointment. He can handle all of the struggle.
You've seen God open incredible doors from music to film. What moments really stand out to you as a clear sign of his hand over your path? And what would you say to anyone who is currently going through a crossroads in their own personal lives and they just don't know which direction to take?
I think people look at what we've done and they think that all of the big moments are like the foundation of what we do. So maybe any type of award or any type of sales success or any of those types of things. Those aren't actually the things that matter. Those actually aren't the moments the hilltop moments aren't the ones that I remember as much as I remember practicing forgiveness when I'm really hurt, or being generous when I want to be greedy, or being hopeful when I want to be disappointed. Like these are the things that have actually given legs to the higher moments. And so, look, I don't know, I don't at a crossroads. I mean, look, seek God in all things. Don't grow weary in searching after who Jesus is. One of my new favorite verses is that don't grow weary of doing good. If you're at a crossroads and you don't know which way to go, I can just tell you this. I tell my kids this. Like, my oldest is a 12-year-old. He's so concerned about what he's going to do for a living because he wants to be a good husband. He wants to provide for his family, and so he's very concerned. At 12, and I was like, "Hey, man, there's a very interesting song that is in Frozen 2, and you guys are gonna be like, this guy's an idiot. He's not theological, but it talks about it talks about doing the next right thing. And I think sometimes when we get in these crossroads, we think so hard about, and sometimes we have to wrestle with these things, but we think so much like, if I make this decision and it's the wrong one, my life is going to be ruined. God is bigger than that. You sometimes could go make the wrong decision and it could breed tremendous personal growth to where a year later you say, I'm not going to do that job anymore. I see that I probably shouldn't go. But if I didn't make that decision, I wouldn't be over here to have the perspective of me to go in this direction. And so I like to say this, in those crossroads, do the next right thing. What's the next right thing, Luke? Go find out. Go find out. What is the next right thing for you? Run these decisions through scripture. Run these decisions through prayer. I think you'll find it.
What advice would you give to a young person who's watching today and they feel called to use their gifts for God, but don't know where to start? What would you say to them?
The things that God has already given you, the community that you're already in, whatever talents that, if you like to sing, well, go sing, and you're in a small group, hey, lead a hymn once a week. Just do the things that God's already just kind of putting in your heart. Just do them in your local community. There's a lot of people held back because they think, well, it's not me getting I'm not able to lead worship in church, so my talents are of no use to God. That's not true. I want to be a speaker one day, and I want to be a pastor. And right now I'm 16 years old, and I none of those opportunities are coming. Man, get together with a few people and start teaching them the things that God's teaching. You don't have to be a theologian. Like, look, if everyone had the perfect training to do the perfect things, no one would be used. It would be impossible for anyone to accomplish anything, because almost always God is qualifying the called. I don't feel like, ironically, people would look like, well, Luke, but if you were to look at your life, you were perfectly groomed and perfectly to do the jobs that you're doing. And you know what's funny is, I do not think that. I haven't felt that minute when I look back in my career. I'm an average singer that God is allowed to give me something that other people, didn't write songs before I was 19. But I went on a journey with him, and I made a deal with God very young that he could have my talents and that I would just do my best to follow him in all the different ways. That's what God's asking you young people to do. Don't worry about the end result. Don't worry about what other people think. Just take your simple gifts with what God, you like to paint, go paint. Get in a group of people that love to paint. You want to do it for the glory of God? Tell him that. You'll be amazed at how these things are shaped. Obviously I'm talking about arts things, but like if you want to be a businessman, take small little business decisions, give them to God, watch how they grow.
Luke Smallbone, singer, actor, and one half of For King and Country. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for giving us an insight into your amazing new single. Take care and God bless, brother.
Hey, thanks, Cyrus. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for the time.